Abuse of power and corruption is significant throughout the play. From the very beginning, you get this concern with hierarchy. Everybody is resenting one another based on their hierarchy. In the very first lines of the play, you get the commander who's irked that he has to go and wait for this kid who the master of Calatrava or whatever, and the commander is just frustrated that he has to do it to sublimate what he sees as his dignity to this other person who's on a slightly different, whereas the commander is a military person, generally. The master of the order is more of a church hierarchy. So they're kind of rivals. But the commander is also like a grown man, and the master is a teenager, essentially, is just, you know, a child in his mind. And just think about the hierarchy of age, how, you know, oh, I shouldn't be made to wait for some snotty little brat. That sense of irritation at being beneath someone. And his and the commander's aides, I forget their names. I don't really care. The little minions who are running around him, they're speaking in sort of like double speak to him because they really seem to hate his guts. And they're talking about what a petty tyrant he is, and oh, it's so difficult to deal with somebody who's so nasty. But it's clear that they're taking some shots at him. So they, being just below him, hate him. But at the same time, when you see those same characters in the village, they are resenting them, and they are then, the minions are suddenly higher on the totem pole than the villagers, so they're holding it out. So there are all these little petty distinctions between rank that that is creating tension and conflict within the play. The two figures that escape this kind of pettiness in a very conspicuous way are Ferdinand and Isabella. They always seem wise, they always seem calm, they always seem like the ideal rulers in a very conspicuous way. Is that realistic? Is that true? The idea that these two people can be the absolute standouts in a system like this seems unrealistic to me. So now maybe this is Lope de Vega saying, yeah, you can, if you have great and noble and genuinely brilliant God-chosen monarchs like our illustrious king and queen, then everything's going to be okay. Because they're not subject to all the pettiness. It's everybody beneath them. But if you can, if you are, oh, what is the, if you are not that fortunate to have the chosen vessels of God in your midst, they are just as subject to that. So when all of this tension and all of this conflict is breaking out, you have to remind yourself, this is on Ferdinand and Isabella's watch. Why couldn't they see this? They should be ultimately responsible. They are never held responsible. Maybe this is Lope de Vega. Maybe this is the play, at least, excusing them and saying that, okay, we should never really, this wasn't their fault at all. They are all those things. They are perfect. Or maybe he makes the situation just so unbelievable, just so impossible to buy, that you have to say, that's all BS. He can't say that. If a playwright were to come out and say, King and the Queen are responsible, he would not have his play produced, and he might be killed. He was also, Lope de Vega, by the time he was writing this, or maybe after like it was first performed, I'm not sure of the dates, but right in that period, he was made, I think, a bishop. So he was a higher up in the church hierarchy himself. And the church, understandably, the Vatican, was very invested in protecting the power of the good Catholic monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella. So Lope de Vega was not going to criticize anyone directly. But when you can't criticize someone directly, you can still criticize them indirectly. You can hint, you can suggest, you can use a little something that the English poet Keats would later on call negative capability, where you just create the obvious impression of something but never actually say it. That is plausible deniability. Somebody comes to you and says, you were critical of the king. You were critical of the pope. You should be punished. Look at the play. And all you have to say as the artist is say, yeah, look at the play. You don't see anything in there. Can you point to a line where I say the king and the queen are culpable for all of this violence? The king and the queen themselves are, in a way, tyrants? No, that's not there. There is no line that says that. And in fact, he could point very blatantly to all the times that they seem so wise, so perfect, so well balanced, so emotionally well adjusted, so God chosen for that role. But as an artist, he knows the impression that he can prompt with you. He knows that just by poking you different ways, he can create some understandings, create some impressions that are completely beyond his control at a certain point. Well, if you took it to mean that, then that's on you. You are free to interpret it however you want. But he, as the artist, creates the context for which those conclusions can be drawn. That is a kind of hinting, a kind of passive-aggressive criticism almost, but it is also a sign of sophisticated artistry, because, it's really not all that interesting to have somebody say that, okay, the king and the queen are to blame, and that's it. Nuance, a little subtlety, a little ambiguity creates much more interesting art, because then you, as the viewer, the audience, are dragged into the process, and you can't be passive at that time. You can't just sit back and say, what's happening in the play? What now? What's happening in the play now? Oh, it's all just going by over you. It doesn't matter. You are being called into the process to say, all right, that's confusing. That's a little bit, fuzzy. What's going on there? And the minute you do that, you are co-writing the play. You are creating the remainder of the play, the remainder of the meaning, the stuff that the artist goes just up to the line to, but doesn't actually complete, because he expects you to do some of that work too. And that's what really makes great art, when you are involved in the process and it's not just, something that's there, but you get brought in and you have to sort of sit there and puzzle it out and think about it and make it all make sense. That is the thrill of really great art.